When the three emissaries approach Achilles on the beach, he is actually stroking a lyre and singing songs about the glorious deeds of men. In many ways, he appears like Homer himself would to his audience. What you'll note is in this ordering of the poem, this was actually the end of the first day of singing or the beginning of the second day of the singing, if we're in a 3-day festival, if this is being divided up, as Elizabeth Vandiver and others have proposed, into these 3 days of performance. Something similar also happens in the Odyssey around this time. You have the bard singing at the end of the day's performance, reminding people of his place in this story. And here we have the bard singing about the wrath of Achilles. The poem could close here. We began with the fight between Agamemnon and Achilles, and there's a sense of maybe this will all close and all end at the end of the day with this great approach to Achilles, and he will submit to Agamemnon and all shall be well. Now, there's foreshadowing that suggests this is not actually going to happen, but you do have this feeling that this is the beginning and maybe this could be the end of a story. Because it's not going to be the end of the story, it thus begins another round in some ways. So it's a great place to resolve the action of the first 9 books by introducing a new layer to the action, by reigniting the problem, so to speak, and reminding us what it is that we're actually listening for. So let's take a look at the appeals that are brought to Achilles, right? Appeals to his time and his kleos from Odysseus, Phoenix, and Ajax. I'm not going to focus too much on Ajax's response here because his is probably less pertinent and less crafted than the other two. We're going to begin with Odysseus. When the 3 men approach, they are welcomed to the beach unexpectedly. They sit down to feast with Achilles. They feel like he is in a good mood, and they begin their speech. Odysseus is the first to speak. He is the master rhetorician. He knows how to talk to his audience. He knows the best possible means of persuasion. And he begins with a charge. Rise up, right? Anybody who watches Hamilton will hear those lines and want to start singing. Rise up seems like a great start to this speech. He's encouraging Achilles, rise up, stop singing your songs and actually do the glorious deeds of men. He begins with an appeal to his father. This will be repeated several times, the appeal to Peleus. It's repeated here, Phoenix repeats it, and then it's said again at the end when Priam will actually approach Achilles and appeal to Peleus. I appeal to you as your father's son, right? So he's appealing to his father. He's trying to pathos, more so Phoenix will actually draw on the pathos, the emotions of Achilles, and remember who he is and who his identity is. He gives the offer of Time, all of the illustrious gifts that he gives all the offers of Time that Agamemnon had put forward. Only this time, he leaves off any mention of, and let Achilles surrender his anger to me, let him not act like Hades, who everybody hates, and let him instead remember that I'm the greatest king of all. Odysseus knows that that really won't persuade Achilles, and they want Achilles to come back. So he doesn't repeat word for word what Agamemnon says. He lists out the illustrious gifts, and then he adds 2 things. He adds, please have pity on those of us who are fighting and come back. We need you. Have pity on us. Even if you are still angry with Agamemnon, can you have pity on us? And then second, perhaps you could also win great glory by killing Hector. And that is something that Agamemnon had not mentioned. It has not been mentioned until now. It's a great place to mention it because we do know that he will kill Hector and that his wrath will change from Agamemnon to Hector, but it is not actually there yet. So Odysseus introduces the idea of killing Hector and how that might be something that Achilles would desire. But we get to see as the listeners of this tale that Achilles does not yet desire that. And that's important for this point in the story. It's something that we're going to be waiting for then, is when will Achilles desire to kill Hector? Because that's the point that he will re-enter the war. Odysseus' speech doesn't work, so Phoenix tries his. Again, he refers to Achilles like a father would. He tries to pull on their relationship, kind of tugging on the heartstrings, so to speak. He calls him a dear child. He talks about other heroes, right? We know that Achilles was singing about the deeds of heroes, and therefore maybe that appeal will work. And then reminds him again, you're going to have to give in eventually. Why not do it now when you have gifts and honor to look forward to? Later, you might actually surrender your anger, and there will be no more gifts and honor. We see that Achilles' response is as masterful as Odysseus' ability to speak. In fact, the emissaries are amazed after Achilles speaks, and they are dumbfounded. They feel as though they're listening to someone and they don't know who he is. Achilles sounds like another person. Even for the listeners, right, to imagine this scene, we have the opening in Iliad 1, wrath, sing goddess the ruinous wrath of Peleus' son Achilles. We know of Achilles' anger, and that's what we have come to expect. He almost draws his sword against Agamemnon and is only stayed by Athena's hand, right? He throws himself at his mother's feet and says, please, mother, would you make sure that a bunch of the Achaeans die so they can realize how much they need me? We've seen him as a very wrathful figure. We've seen him to be violent. We know that he desires for things, for time, for kleos, and yet we find him at the beach, singing a song, playing a lyre, and then he gives a great rhetorical speech in response to Odysseus and Phoenix and Ajax. And it's kind of startling for his friends who don't recognize him in this speech, because he throws off everything that they have told him is worth fighting for. He has defied all of their expectations in his response to them. First, he responds by saying, I'm not going to speak like Odysseus. I'm not going to use rhetoric. I'm going to say exactly what it is that I'm thinking and what is on my heart, right? I'm not going to be someone who pretends to be one thing and is another. And of course, we'll see in the Odyssey more this ability for Odysseus to lie and to create fictions. He explains to them one of the reasons that he will not yield is because Agamemnon gets everything, even though Achilles himself is the braver fighter. And no one argues with that. Achilles is the braver soldier, the braver fighter. For some reason that Achilles cannot contemplate, Agamemnon is the Lord of men. Agamemnon is in charge of this fight. And Achilles says, it doesn't make any sense to me. I go in and I fight and I'm braver than him. I'm better than him at war. And yet because he's king of men, I'm supposed to give all of the things that I fight for to him. He gets the largest part of the bounty. Why? That doesn't make any sense. And of course, it probably had not even occurred to Odysseus and Ajax and Phoenix to ask this question. And they too might be thinking, that is a strange question. Why is Agamemnon receiving everything? Why is he the Lord of men and the rest of us as kings in our rightful homes, right? Odysseus is king of Ithaca. Why are we not receiving the greater part of the prizes in the time? His second point is that Agamemnon has treated Achilles in the same way that Paris has treated Menelaus. By taking Briseis, Agamemnon has actually enacted the same problem that they are there fighting the Trojan War for. Paris took Helen from Menelaus, which was his rightful wife. Briseis, even though, and Achilles points this out, even though she was only my captive wife, she was my wife nonetheless, and I loved her. And by him taking her, he's doing the exact same thing to me that we are here fighting against. So what makes him any different than our enemy? And that also is a good question. Can you tell who is right or who is wrong, right? As Rachel Bespaloff pointed out, who is good and who is bad is in the Iliad. Some are winning, some are losing. They're all fighting, they're all dying, they're all suffering. And Achilles makes this point. If you can't tell which side is the enemy, if the Trojans and the Greeks are committing the same atrocities and the same problems against one another, then what is the point for him fighting for Agamemnon? Finally, Achilles concludes, after Ajax actually gets a chance to speak, and Ajax says, I'm second best and I can't keep them back. And if someone as powerful as me can't keep back the Trojans, then we really don't have a choice or a chance unless you come. Achilles responds finally, listen, until Hector reaches the ships and my people, the Myrmidons, my people are threatened by fire and that we would lose our ships, only then will I ever return back. He really concludes by saying, I've given you all of my reasons. Time is no longer valuable to me. Agamemnon is no different than our enemy. And finally, listen, I will compromise. When my people are threatened, then I will act like a king and I will step up and fight Hector, which is great. It means he's not actually going to go away as he threatened. He's not leaving altogether, but only at that point will he enter the war. And this, of course, is what he actually does. One interesting note that comes up in the speech that really recontextualizes the Manus, the wrath of Achilles, is the two fates that Achilles reveals to his friends. Thetis, as his mother, the goddess, has revealed to him that Achilles not only has one fate, but he has two possible fates. Now, whether or not he actually has two fates, or she has told him that he has two fates, or every single soldier in every war ever always has these two fates, and Achilles just lists them out, we're not really given privy to. We don't really know which one it is. But he does say that Thetis has revealed to him that these are his two possible fates and that he must decide between the two of them, right? It sounds like the two fates are what face every single soldier in war. In book 6, we saw Hector really outlining these two possibilities. He could stay home with Andromache and really enjoy his time with her and be considered a coward, but at least he'd have his family. Or he can go out and fight and he might die, right? So there's the possibility of you stay home and you get domestic bliss, look at Paris and Helen, or you go out and fight and you risk your life and you might die, but you also could win Kleos and glory, and Hector was aware of that too. And this is the same possibility that Achilles gives us in listing out his two fates. He said that his mother told him there's two fates. If I remain here to fight around the city of the Trojans, my return home is lost, but my glory will be undying. Right? So here's the positive. My glory, my Kleos will be undying, but I will never go home. But if I go home to the beloved land of my father, outstanding glory will be lost, but my life will be long, and death's end will not come on me swiftly. Achilles then has this option. He can go home and live a long and happy life, but he will have no glory. No one will even be reading about Achilles. No one will be singing his songs, and he doesn't know which way to go. Or if he can stay, he will win undying glory, but he will never go home. He will die on the battlefield. And he must determine between these two things, and he doesn't know which way he's going to go. At this point, he thought he was going to pack up his ship. He was going to go home, and he actually told his friends, you guys should go home too. There's no point in fighting this. Let's all go home and live happily ever after, and this war just be a thing of the past. Let's just let Agamemnon and Menelaus keep fighting. They can kill, other people and die on the battlefield. Let's go home and get away from this war. And yet, now that his friends have come, he said, when Hector is on the ships, I will go back and fight. He does not yet know that that's going to happen, but we will see that it will happen and that he will go back and fight. And we will have Achilles' death, because how else would we be hearing from Homer right now about his undying Kleos?